So back in 1983, I was working for a subsidiary of Ball Corporation at that point. I was the president of a subsidiary for them. And when the market tanked, my boss, who was the corporate president, said, you know what, we need an economic development tool here in Boulder. So he went to a company called Public Service of Colorado, wasn't it? Public Service of Colorado. That was our power company. And he said, let's create an incubator. And Ball, the chamber, the city, and maybe a couple of law firms funded a director to start an economic development incubator. A lady that's a real estate developer in Longmont, which is one of the small towns to the northeast of here, donated an empty building. She had a whole building. She said, it's yours. And we lived in that building how long, I suppose, 10, 15 years probably? Yeah. So, so that was the start of the incubator. Now here's what worked. This was funded, it was a nonprofit. We hired a director. He had no administrative staff, he had no assistant staff. He had the beginnings of, and we knew and by the way, I was chairman of the company at that point, of what was called the Boulder Technology Incubator at that point. And I got that job because my boss, who started it, didn't want to do it. So this guy he was a great guy. He had been CEO of 2 companies. He was an engineer. He was a marketing person. So he had a good background for mentoring young CEOs and startups and those sorts of things. And he had this job. Now imagine, he's a one-man band, and he gets about half his funding sort of guaranteed from Ball, Public Service, the Chamber, and a couple other places. And anything else he needed, he had to go raise the money for. So he had 2 jobs. One was fundraising, which wasn't, frankly, a strong suit. But he's an operating guy. Or he could mentor 4 or 5 or 6 companies. And so the Boulder Technology Incubator, as we called it back then, usually had 4 to 6, maybe 8 clients, and they'd last for a year. And by the way, there's a bad part to having facilities as a part of your incubator. And Tim will tell you tomorrow that you don't need facilities anymore in an incubator. But back at that time, these were nice facilities. This was an empty building that got abandoned with the oil bust. And people were in companies that were doing very well at that point, but they didn't want to leave. And the rent was really cheap. And so we had people that stayed there long beyond where they should. But in any case, so we would average, I would guess, on a low period, 4 companies we were working with, and these were all from the community or a technology from CU, to probably a peak of 8. And what would happen is when he had to raise money, the companies suffered. And so he would work with the companies for a while, and then he had to go rush off and go get another law firm to sponsor us for $5 grand a year or something like that. But that lasted for forever, all the way through through the part of the 80s and into the 90s. One of the better things we did is we actually were able to go to, one of the things we started to do, Jerry was the name of the director at that point, and we started to try to find angel investors so that we could have somebody that the entrepreneurs could present their idea to that had a money view of the idea. And we were pretty successful at that. And so at that, I think it was around 97, maybe 95, we actually formed a Boulder Technology Incubator Fund. We raised $700,000, which, you know, in the 90s was a lot better than it is today, for sure. But it wasn't very much money. And we said, okay, we'll do 25 or 50,000 initial seed grants, with maybe another 25 to 50 to follow based on on the progress of the company. And with that $700,000, we did 11 companies. Over, I guess, until 95. No, 2000. When did we do the last investment? About 2000, probably, we did the last investment. I'm an investor. I'm still getting royalty checks. The fund took 12 years to break even. So don't pitch it as an equity pitch when you go out to raise money. Pick it as an economic development with potential of a return. But I have about a 1.5 to 1 return in 17 years. So it worked. It worked. And you know, I'm delighted with that, right? I mean, it did exactly what we wanted it to do. My wife's not very happy with it. But that was a good thing that we did. Let me talk about another thing that has created this environment. We have a lot of students that come to see you from out of state, especially the Midwest and East and stuff. And they've never seen 300 Days of Sunshine, and they've never been skiing, and they've never had the ambiance and the environment that we have here. And frankly, they graduate and they won't leave. There's another pool of low-cost labor that's really bright for the companies that we form. Both of the companies that I work with hire interns from CU all the time, winter and summer both. And we hire them full-time when they graduate if we've got a slot for them. So, if you look back then, aerospace was one of the really big areas in Colorado, and it still is. Well, of course, tourism is the biggest, by the way, if you look at it from an economic development perspective. The mountains and just tourism is the biggest problem. But aerospace is a very, very large, technology-driven, high-budget, high-dollar, long-term contract type, which provides some stability most of the time. There's been downturns, but most. When I came here, telecom equipment and telecom services, which is Tim's background as well, by the way, was a very, especially fiber and fiber optic stuff around here, was a very big. Rotating disk memory was also, and it continues to be a huge technological around here, probably one of the best. I mean, almost every disk drive and hard drive and has an operation either here or in Longmont. Production's all in the Far East, but engineering and stuff is here. So, as I said, the director, one of the really great things that happened, and he's going to cover some of the stuff in between, but I'm going to jump ahead just a second to some stuff that happened when Tim came aboard. And I get to brag on him because I hired him. He came, we had 3 terrific candidates for his job, and because our director was retired. And he came to me before we actually accepted the job, and he said, you know what, your business model is broken. And we did not have facilities at that time. We did try to take equity with our companies that we work with, and he'll tell you that that's probably not a great idea. I'm still all your thunder. And we were still in this feast or famine. One director can run 5 or 6 or 7 companies or raise money, but can't do both. And that's what he saw. And he said, I have a better way. And we said, okay. And what you're going to hear tomorrow is a very much better way. I've been chairman since we hired him, and I have to tell you that I cannot be more pleased with. You've probably seen the economic reports we put out every year, which is something we never did before, by the way. And they're pretty darn good. And it's a model that's gaining nationwide attention as a different way to do technology transfer and innovation.